Now, for those of you who have problems with the trailers, like taking turns and whatnot, all you really need to know is that where these wheels are your pivot points. It doesn't matter if it's here, which actually pivots a lot easier than this one here who drags behind you. And when you come across like curves and stuff, you may have to pull your truck up far enough to line it up to the tires so that you can make your turn without driving over them. That's where this one actually becomes easier, because you'll hit the curve first by getting ready to pass it before your whole truck is in the middle of the roadway. So even when you're backing, you're working with the pivot of whether it's in this location or this. It's just that this one, it takes a little bit more because the trailer tends to turn slower, where here it turns a little more quicker because the 360 pivot is here instead of back here. These here aren't too bad. They kind of get a little bit difficult because you have the spread instead. So it's not like it's a wider pivot that you're dealing against in your fight. But it's not like it's going to be any more difficult to do. Now, the best way to practice for backing up is first find a truck stop that you can be able to use as a practice ground, because you have all these lanes. So you will need your own trailer and you will need to have your own truck by then. But this would be the best time. And then you just go look until you find one that you want to try. So we'll go ahead and try this one here. Pull, yank, pull hard left. So the whole idea is pushing and turning. And that's what you're trying to accomplish. Trailers in which the axles are towards the rear more are just a tad more difficult. But as you can see, we're pushing and we're turning. That's the idea. And what we're trying to do is trying to work it in. Now you see how it's sitting? Some people I've seen get worked up. Actually, you use that to an advantage. Because I'm looking in this mirror. Let me do it again. You usually say the professional driver is the one that could get it on the first hit. I disagree. And sometimes you can get it on the first hit, but not all the time. And that's what you do. You find yourself a truck stop and you conduct your practice on there until you get better at it between the two kinds of trailers, depending on your wheel distance that are on them, until you're able to get it down, especially if you're not accustomed to backing them up. Now I know I keep using the T680, but I do have a Kenworth W90 in here. Okay, so the truck does exist. I don't use this thing. This is known as the trucker's truck. The difference between this and the T680 version is that this is the aerodynamic version of the trucker's truck. And really that's about it. It's still a conventional. It's just they're aerodynamic conventionals. And a lot of truckers prefer to have this model, so this model was never discontinued, because this is like something coming out of the 70s really. And I don't use it because you have to rely 100% on the mirrors, and as you can see from the T80 model, I could look in the back, and I'm used to dealing with cab overs, and you could do that in a cab over. And when and being in EST European Truck Simulator 2, I loved it because they had cab overs in it, and I was kind of disappointed because this game doesn't. My personal mod that I am using here, I do have cab overs. One's an Argosy, the other one is a International from the workshop. And I use them the most. But for all this, we're going to stick with the default game. So the problem with this is the smokestacks are in the way, and it makes it harder to look in the back. So you have to always look in the mirrors and follow what both sides of the mirrors are doing. And I'm not up for all that. So this deals with the oversides loads where all it's got to do is pull forward. And that's as good as it's going to get. But nevertheless, that's why I'm using this model truck for everything. Especially when you're new, this is ideal to start off with till you get more accustomed to what you're doing. And anyways, that's one of the tips on how to get a trailer in the back. If you're not good, you know, you got your truck, you got your money, you got your trailer, go find a truck stop, practice backing into a stall, and then get it, try it either the way I was doing it, try a different trailer in your fleet, try to get it where you start to get the idea on the pivot versus how the tractor pushes and redirects the trailer into the parking spot. That's the best I can explain it. It's kind of hard because it's just so natural for me to do it. But I hope that helped really. Now, I did want to touch base on this real quick. Alright, I'll try to make it as fast as I can. Because I seen it on the forums and talked about it with the modding. That it is more realistic to have cars go over these scales. Okay? And they don't know why SCS doesn't do it that way. Or it's not fair that only the trucks stop here and nobody else. Well, don't worry about what SCS did here because they did their research. But I will explain to you what this is. This is a federal outpost, a DOT checkpoint for semi-trucks. When you are an over-the-road driver, you know that more than anybody else. Because when you have a CDL, you're owned by the federal government. You have logbooks and everything that you have to keep track of. And when you come here, you get level 1 inspection if they call you in. They want to see all your paperwork and everything. Or they do a level 2 inspection, so it's all your paperwork manifests, including a pre-trip of the truck to make sure it's in order. Or level 3, it'll be everything in a more detailed pre-trip on your truck. Checking for lights, tire conditions, whether the bearings are leaking oil, so on and so forth. Because it gets like that. Because that's the way of things. You can go on YouTube and find videos all about it. There's always some trucker with a vlog who makes a complaint or is like, well, it wasn't so bad stopping at the scale today. Or another guy would be saying, you will not believe the pain in the butt I have to deal with today. And when they check drivers with logbooks, if their logbooks are incorrect, they're looking at fines, or if they felt that they're lying on the logbook, could be serving jail time. Because the majority of these checkpoints or scales, they're controlled by the state police. Because the DOT is federally mandated for the semi-trucks all across the United States. And then you have the state's DOT laws in regarding commercial vehicles. That's why there are different speeds. That's why there's only specific routes that trucks can take besides highways. That's why there are limitations. Because I've even seen complaints saying, well, I don't understand why SCS has little roads here. They should have more. No. In the United States, this is a truck route. The highway trucks belong on, deterring off of the highway, are truck routes. And this is where semi-trucks belong on. And every state has a layout that follows that. And that's where the state laws start coming in, besides the differences in the speed. Because this is a vehicle carrying over 36,000 pounds and already has a trouble with how it stops and is able to get through traffic. That's why you get trained to drive these things. So being the case, no. Automobiles stopping at one of these is not realistic. No, it is not fair that automobiles stop here because they have absolutely nothing to do with the DOT mandate whatsoever. And therefore, it would make no sense for them to stop here. So when you're doing mods or you're talking like that, sounds sensible. How about cars stop there? I made a mod to put cars up there because why not? Because I think it would be fair that they would, and that's why I did it. Don't add realism, because there's nothing realistic about it. You get a car going over scales, you drag the state police attention wanting to know if you're lost, or you're confused, or wondering what you're up to, because that is not something that happens, period. And that's the way how that is. Now, the deal with the weights, okay, I'll explain that real quick. So, the basis of the scale is to make sure if you're overloaded or not. So, usually the standard guideline, you have to bear with me, it's been a long time. You may have to check it up for yourself. It's like about 12,000 on the steer axle. I believe this is like 24 and 24 on the tandems. And, I mean, it's been a long time. But the weight distribution is along here. Okay? So, if you go over the scales, and this is, where the load here is lighter, but heavier here and here because the load is pushing down and partially forward against the frame, then you have to, even though that SCS did this for different configs for you, but realistically, if they found that at the scales, you have to pull off and shift. So if the weight falls here, here, and here evenly across the line, then this is where you need this part of the axle at. Now, the way that it basically shifts is you see this is a DOT locking pin, because I can see they actually detailed that pin. And there's a rail underneath here. And for the most part, there's usually a lever in the front with a DOT pin in there. You pop it, lift it, leave the trailer brakes on, and then either move the truck backwards to do this or forward to pull it back. And then you would interlock it again and put your pin in. And you could tell who has forgotten to do that because these wheels are sitting behind the trailer and the trailer's on the ground. That's exactly how that happened. They forgot to lock this out after they did the shift. Anyways, so when you're at the scale and the weight is wrong, you will need to shift the trailer to compensate. And sometimes, no matter here, so let's say here it's bad because all the weight's in the center, which will cause it to bend in the center. So you come here and this is the closest. And let's say it's not exactly, but it's close. In some cases, what they'll do is they'll give you a pass, which you pay a ticket on. Or you could turn around back to the shipper and get reloaded and then rechecked again for your weight before you can go on. Or you park in the parking lot, somebody comes out and unloads you and reloads you again, in which you go over the scales to double check to make sure it's right. Yeah, it's like that. But let's say also, no matter what you're doing here, this is the closest, but it's still overloaded than it should be. And your manifest is clean. So what ends up happening is if I'm correct, what they'll do is they'll make you pull over, they ground your truck, and they call in a company to unload this, and you will get ticketed for being overloaded, which actually is more, because you're not getting a small minor fine and a pass through the state. You're not getting that. What you're getting is grounded by the state police, and you're going to sit there until somebody comes, unloads it, and reloads it up again to be the rate that it's supposed to, and whatever doesn't get loaded, that's the way that's going to go. In some states, they don't care if you're a little bit overloaded, and they can consider a pass. They may be picky and be like going, you go back to the shipper, get it resolved now, or call somebody, because you cannot go any further than where you're at now. And you could be looking at being escorted for all that. So that's the deal with the weigh part of the weigh station. So you go up there, you get weighed to make sure you're properly weighed in the bounds you're supposed to be in. And if not, you'll get fined and have to pay for that. And depending if they're doing level checks, level 1, level 2, level 3, could either make or break your day. You can go on YouTube. They have it all up there. I did see some vlogs. That's just the way that's going to go down for the most part. So that is the whole deal with this. So even though that there is not much here to deal with except that kind of a check, I wouldn't really complain it, because that would be terrible if you had to pull up here because you've been running the game with bad tires, and then it suddenly tells you that you are fined for bad tires. They have to be replaced, and before you have to leave, and then a tool shed appear in the corner that you got to drive up to get it replaced. So really, this part isn't all that bad, but that's the basis of what that's all about. So now you know. So have a good day and have fun playing in the game. In the game, as they say in real life, keep the dirty side down.